1 Corinthians chapter 13, 1-8, the gift of love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all away my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I might boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends.
Second reading this morning is from Romans 12, verses 9 to 18, subtitled Marks of the True Christian. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit, serving the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought of what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all.
Thank you, Julia. Very nice job. Thank you, Dennis, for sharing our scripture with us today. Last week, we started our new sermon series on awesome relationships by looking at the 5 reasons marriage exists. We learned that marriage exists because God created it. We learned that marriage exists for the raising of the human race. We learned that marriage exists for the protection of children. We learned that marriage exists for the perfection of our character. And we learned that marriage exists for the reflection of Christ's union with us as a metaphor for the kind of intimacy God wants to have with us here and in heaven. We know we live in a society that doesn't respect marriage. So how do we fight for our marriage, for our committed love relationships? Because face it, there's nothing in society encouraging us to stay married. Everything around you is encouraging you to walk out. So how do you fight for your marriage? To begin with, we know that life is seasonal. You go through different seasons, some great seasons and some not so great seasons. You go through them over and over and over again. Seasons are a very good metaphor for marriage because marriage doesn't stay the same. It changes. So I'm going to use spring to represent the time when maybe your marriage is super busy, when you're both like ships passing in the night. It's just a super intense kind of busyness. I'm going to use summer to talk about the good stage. It's gravy when everything is going well. I'll use fall to talk about when There is change going on. And I'll use winter for when the bottom falls out, when everything kind of falls apart. So spring. Spring is the season of busyness. I actually think that busyness is the #1 destroyer of marriages. We get too busy for each other. We don't have time to talk. You don't have time to think. You don't have time to make love. You don't have time to be together. Because you're so busy going here and there and everywhere. We trick ourselves into thinking this is only going to last a short time. In 3 months, it's going to ease up. Our schedules are going to be different. Things are going to look different than they do now. The problem is, these kinds of seasons turn into patterns. And before you know it, it's a lifestyle. It's a habit for living an incredibly busy life where you don't have time for the person that means the most to you. Here is one of the best suggestions I have for the spring of your life. It's an easy suggestion. You've heard it before, but do you do it? I'm calling you to do it. So in the spring of your life, make time for fun. Make time for fun. Time to go on dates. When you get married, you need to continue to date your mate. What you did to get married is what you must continue to do the rest of your life to stay married. I say it like this. If there was more courting in marriage, then there would be fewer marriages in court. Doesn't everybody love summer? It represents times when things are great. You look forward all year to the summer season. So there are times and periods as well in your relationship in which really everything is going great. Your health is good. Maybe you've got enough money. You're not struggling with your finances. You're getting along great. It just feels like summer is this easy, breezy time. The unfortunate thing is, as I've discovered, these periods of time, these periods of summer are very short. Kind of like summers in Wisconsin. They don't last very long. There's always something that interrupts. But when you're in one of those seasons of easy, breezy time, it's the time to invest in your relationship. That's the time to plant. And that's the time to store up. Bank during the good times. In other words, don't wait for the wheel to fall off the car before you decide to get help. So instead of waiting for things to get horrendous, in this good season of marriage, go ahead and invest in some marriage counseling, some marriage seminars, a marriage class, or some marriage books that you can share together. When things are going good, that's the time to do the maintenance, to do the marriage tune-up, so to speak. Get marriage counseling while it's good, not when it's bad. As a pastor, I can't tell you how many times one spouse has begged the other to get marriage counseling, and they have said, no, not me. Then when the best friend walks out the door, all of a sudden they're all ears. They're ready for counseling. Well, sorry, sweetheart, it's probably too late. You waited too long. You get counseling before you need it, in the good times. In a relationship, nobody stands still. You're always either moving closer together or you're moving apart. There is no relationship that stands still. It doesn't just stagnate. So, if you're not growing closer together intentionally, you're growing apart. So the summer is the time to send your roots deep, both into the Lord and into your relationship. You need to, because the harder times are coming. They're inevitable. They're going to come. So if you can send your roots down, build really solid into your relationship in those times when things are going better, it's a really wise decision. So spring is when things are really busy and you have to be intentional about creating time for connecting in the relationship. And summer is those rare short periods of time when things are going so well. You need to bank and invest during those times in the future. Then fall is a season of change. Two ways I want to talk about change. Change when there are good changes happening, and change when there are some not so good changes happening. So change when it's good is maybe when you've moved, a major move. Maybe there's a new baby or grandbaby. Maybe you've just gotten married. Maybe you've taken on a new career, new job. So there are these major life changes, and it requires some adjustment. That can create a lot of stress. But it's really good, ultimately, even though it may be stressful. Sometimes we fight against change because it disrupts our lives. Yet if we can look at it through the lens that of it may be difficult right now, but in the long run I'm going to be so glad that I took that job, that we bought that house. If you can look through it with that lens, the change can actually be good for you. The stress can be creative, refreshing even. So I would just tell you, in those seasons of change, you will have to learn to adjust. But don't be too stressed about it. If your marriage is going to last, you're going to go through enormous amounts of change. If you stay with the same person for life, you grow and you don't stay the same. There's change as well. So your marriage will succeed or fail by your ability to learn how to deal with change. But let me stop here a moment and talk about the kinds of things that don't change in life. Like your personality. That's not going to change. when you kind of look over at each other and go, you're never going to change, are you? And believe me, every relationship hits those moments, those kind of stuck places where you realize that the person you are married to has some habits that drive you absolutely insane. And the likelihood that that will ever change is remote and dim. So then what are you going to do about it? How do you deal with it? Well, stop using the word incompatibility. Don't use it as an excuse. People say, we're just incompatible, so we're going to get a divorce. I don't believe in that term, though I had to use it in court when my first husband divorced me. I had to say, we are incompatible. In truth, I think the word incompatibility is a word made up by divorce attorneys to justify divorce. The truth is, you're not compatible with anybody. None of us are. You will never meet anybody that you are 100% compatible with, because nobody agrees with everything you do. So no matter who you marry, you are incompatible. In our marriages, we need to realize, therefore, that love is a choice. People think love is a feeling. Well, it's not. Love is a choice. Love creates feelings, some great feelings. But difference in a relationship can be a huge stumbling block. Difference is one of the biggest things that causes people to lose some of the great loving feelings they had for the other, because they don't know what to do with the differences. In fighting for an awesome marriage, you've got to decide whether you're going to love somebody in spite of themselves. Because there are things when you get married about your mate that are never going to change no matter how hard you try. You've got to decide, am I going to force them to change before I love them? If so, that's not real love. You have to accept things that are real when they're not always ideal. Let me just stop here a minute and say, as I do this message and as I did last week's, I'm not talking about relationships where there's abuse. I'm not talking about relationships where there is really no love. I'm talking about relationships that the majority of our marriages have, which is a loving relationship, though it goes through change. A great marriage is the union of two great forgivers. That's how you have a great marriage. Decide today for your marriage, no matter where it is along the path, that you are going to be happily incompatible for the rest of your lives. You and your mate will never be completely compatible. You're just too different. But you can truly be content being happily incompatible. So spring is busy, be intentional. Summer, bank for the future. Fall, if there is good change, you're going to adjust and look for the positives in it. And when you run into places where there's not going to be a change, then that's an opportunity to grow in acceptance, grow in love, and decide that you're going to be happily incompatible. Then there's the season of winter. If you're married for any length of time, you're going to go through winter. That's the season of loss. That's the season of grief. It could be anywhere from something like an affair that happens in your marriage, a betrayal. There's a death. There's bankruptcy, cancer. There could be even mental illness. There could be a child of yours that goes to jail or prison. That absolutely breaks your heart. It's a fact. You're going to have crisis in life, whether you get married or not. But I'd rather go through it with a support system of somebody who you are happily incompatible with than going in alone. In marriages, you don't fix the blame. You fix the problem. That's one of the key things to do. And another key thing is to put in the blood, sweat, and tears necessary in conflict to come out on the other side with deeper intimacy. Not brokenness, not scars that cannot heal, but a deeper intimacy. Now you might think, why would I even want to go through it if it's that difficult? If it's really blood, sweat, and tears? Well, I just tell you, do it because it's worth it. It's because of the intimacy. Couples who go through what I lovingly call the tunnel of chaos and stick with each other get greater intimacy on the other side. One of the things you have to do in the crises of life is never judge feelings. And never try to talk your spouse out of a feeling. A feeling is neither right nor wrong. A feeling is simply a feeling. Why is it when somebody else has a feeling that you don't have, you feel duty-bound to talk them out of it? That's just dumb. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean they don't. And you don't need to convince them that it's a wrong feeling. Don't feel that way. Don't feel that way. Have you heard that? It's not right, it's not wrong. It's just a feeling. There's one last thing that I want to say before I close. I want to tell you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Marriage is hard work, but marriage is the greatest picture of God's love for us. We have the opportunity to have that kind of love for ourselves and to show it to a world that is watching and in need. Let me just talk to each of you as a different group. Some of you grew up in homes and the marriage didn't last, and it brought a lot of pain to you, and I'm sorry. Make the decision now that you're going to break the cycle. Maybe you were in a marriage and it failed. you know what? The grace in this place is here for you. What matters is not where you've been. What matters is the direction your feet are going now. If you are married, I want to ask you to make a commitment that when I'm married and in my marriage, it is for life. It's not as long as we both shall love. It's not until it gets hard. Make it forever. So I'm begging you as your pastor to not be afraid of marriage. Be in it, go into it with eyes wide open. Be willing to do the hard part, because the good part is so much better when you do the hard part instead of just giving up. Through the seasons of marriage, fight to keep it awesome with God as your guide.